On Morning News Now, terror in Colorado. This morning, several people badly burned in what authorities are calling a targeted attack against the Jewish community. Witnesses say a man used a makeshift flamethrower to set victims on fire at a demonstration in Boulder to bring awareness to Israeli hostages. We have the latest. Developing this morning, renewed trade war tensions threatening a truce between the U.S. and China as President Trump accuses Beijing of violating the deal. Plus, Wall Street bracing for another wild week over plans to double tariffs on steel and aluminum. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Republicans working to finalize the president's so-called Big Beautiful Bill.
President Trump, I think, could be the most consequential president of the modern era because he has these opportunities to do these big things. The One Big Beautiful Bill is a big first step to provide relief for the American people.
And President Trump pulling his pick for NASA administrator. We will take you to Washington. Also, a warning for travelers heading overseas as a measles outbreak grows. The health alert by the CDC, what doctors want you to know. And corporate controversy as Pride Month begins. We'll look at why more businesses are scaling back support for the LGBTQ plus community.
Good morning. Good to have you with us on a busy Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin this morning with that attack in Colorado. 8 people injured, and the investigation is getting underway.
This incident happened yesterday afternoon in downtown Boulder during a march to support Israeli hostages who are being held by Hamas. The suspect has been identified as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Soliman. He is now facing several charges, including first-degree assault. He's being held on $10 million bond. Police say witnesses reported he used a makeshift flamethrower and threw an incendiary device into the crowd. He was also heard saying "Free Palestine" during the attack. The victims are between 52 and 88 years old, and the FBI says the incident is being investigated as an act of terrorism. We have team coverage ahead this hour, including analysis from NBC News law enforcement analyst Jim Kavanaugh. Let's begin, though, with NBC News correspondent Alice Barr, who has the very latest. Alice, good morning.
Joe and Savannah, good morning. And we are learning this morning that the suspect has now been charged with first-degree murder. That's according to the Boulder County Sheriff's Office daily booking sheet. Important to note, though, that authorities have not confirmed formally that anyone died in the attack, and there's been no update on the condition of the other injured victims. We're working to track down more details as the investigation continues.
This morning, a painful recovery for 8 victims and an entire community after investigators say a man used a makeshift flamethrower and shouted "Free Palestine" during an attack in Boulder, Colorado, on a march calling for the return of Israeli hostages still held in Gaza.
It is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Videos from the scene show a man shouting and waving bottles filled with some kind of liquid. Authorities now identifying the suspect as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Soliman. 2 senior law enforcement officials say he's an Egyptian national and that while the investigation is in the early stages, he appears to have acted alone. Police arrested him at the scene.
And they immediately ran into a chaotic situation where a man was throwing Molotov cocktails and using other devices to hurt people.
Witnesses joined in, rushing to help the victims between the ages of 52 to 88, some with very serious burns.
I was just like, how can I help? And they had like really bad burns all up on their legs. And then I went over to this other grass area that was like right by the front entrance. And there were some people, there was another lady on the ground with really bad burns on her legs, just like screaming.
The attack follows the deadly shooting less than 2 weeks ago of 2 Israeli embassy staff members in Washington, D.C., after which investigators say the suspect shouted that he did it for Gaza. And as the war there between Israel and Hamas drags on, both anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim hate crimes are on the rise.
A senior White House official says that President Trump has been briefed on the attack as Colorado officials, including the governor, condemned the violence, saying the suspect should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Joe.
All right, Alice, thank you.
NBC News law enforcement analyst Jim Kavanaugh joins us now for more on this. Jim, good morning. Thank you very much for being here. So this attack happened in a busy downtown area. For context, I mean, I went to the University of Colorado Boulder. Besides the campus, this is like the heartbeat of the town, and much of this is actually just a pedestrian walkway. This was where this march was happening to support Israeli hostages being held by Hamas. Walk us through specifically how acts of terrorism are investigated. That is what this has been said to be being investigated as. How are police working to piece together what happened?
Yeah, well, it's right in front of our face, Savannah. And as you point out, in the center of Boulder, the building behind the attacker in the video is the courthouse. And, you know, I think what's important here to note in the investigation, as we're discussing, he doesn't run. He doesn't try to get away. This is a guy who's not trying to run away. And, you know, for anybody who says, well, we don't know what the motive is, it's in our face. He's throwing it right at us. He's attacking the Jewish citizens who are walking for hostages, and the target is part of motive. And he's yelling "Free Palestine" and, you know, anti-Semitic statements. It's right in front of us. So it's a hate crime, it's a terror crime, and it's ice cold-blooded murder. And the district attorney has charged 2 counts of murder this morning. We didn't know that last night, that any victims had died, but now they have charged 2 counts of murder. And, you know, other counts of attempted murder and assault and using a weapon. So when we watch the video, it's pretty clear. Here's the assailant. He's got 2 carafes of what we now know is a flammable liquid, clear flammable liquid, most likely gasoline, could be something else, kerosene, or could be something else. And he's got a backpack sprayer behind him. That was probably his improvised flamethrower.
That's right. And Jim, as you mentioned, NBC News reporting that the man has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Colorado authorities said early today. We're going to try and get more information on that. We mentioned this suspect has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Soliman. Senior law enforcement officials say he's an Egyptian national with no prior significant contact with law enforcement. They also say an initial review of what's believed to be a social media account just didn't show anything that points to this attack or a specific ideology. So with that in mind, what will investigators look for here?
Well, they're going to be looking for connections, not only in the U.S., but in Egypt. They're going to see if he's part of a group. Was he ever interacting with any other group that's involved with Palestine? Or is he just taking this on as, you know, a fellow countryman or Arab or person who sympathized with the situation in Gaza? So they'll be looking at all those connections. They'll be looking at the immigration status. He was overstayed his visa. You know, he wouldn't have been able to buy a firearm or anything because he would be illegally in the country. But he, you know, used these improvised weapons. You know, it's interesting to note, just to think about, that a flamethrower does not fall under federal law, you know, as a destructive device or bomb. And, you know, our congressional leaders and staffers up there should think about that. He had a sentence for us, putting a flamethrower under the National Firearms Act, the section on bombs and grenades, where we could interrupt things like that, maybe catch somebody making one or in possession of one. It would really help. Maybe that's something that could be bipartisan, regulating flamethrowers. We would hope so. But anyway, Molotov cocktails have been strictly regulated for 90 years. So we'll have those federal charges, lots of state charges. This guy's the ultimate poltroon and coward. And those citizens who were walking and everybody who helped them and the Boulder police are the ones with the courage and the bravery yesterday.
Jim Kavanaugh, thank you, as always, for your expertise in joining us this morning.
President Trump said over the weekend he's pulling the nomination of billionaire Jared Isaacman as NASA administrator. He cited what he calls a thorough review of prior associations. Isaacman visited space twice on commercial missions that he funded himself. NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor joins us now. Let's start there, Yamiche. What can you tell us about this move by the president to rescind this nomination, and how's Isaacman responding?
Well, it is striking that he is pulling this nomination. He hasn't pulled many others. So it tells you that this is something that really was something that he put some thought into and really didn't believe that he could be confirmed into this job. We also are hearing from Isaacman. I want to read to you part of what he said. He said, I have gained a much deeper appreciation for the complexities of government and the weight of our political leaders. It may not always be obvious through the discourse and turbulence, but there are many competent, dedicated people who love this country and care deeply about the mission. He also said that was on full display during my hearing, where leaders on both sides of the aisle made clear they're willing to fight for the world's most accomplished space agency. So very interesting that he is both sort of pointing to the idea that he learned a lot from this experience, but also pointing to the bipartisan nature of the pushback against him. Joe?
Let's move on to some other news here, Yamiche. NBC also learning the president's intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, exploring ways to try and revamp his routine intelligence briefing. That's according to 5 people with knowledge of discussions. What's going on here? What are we hearing?
Well, our colleagues who reported the story are reporting that the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is looking at ways to tailor the presidential daily briefing for President Trump. This is something that most presidents take every day. He's taken it about 14 times, they reported, since coming into office. And what's striking here is that they're really trying to, in some ways, the top aides to President Trump are trying to think of ways for him to consume it in a way that maybe it's more beneficial for him. So one of the things under discussion is actually turning it into a video that mimics in big ways Fox News broadcasts, which is one way that officials are looking at possibly getting him to sort of consume the information. They're also looking at other things like maybe including less text and more graphics. That was done during his first term. There's also some talk of whether or not he might change this altogether and maybe make it less daily and more in the way that he's been wanting to consume it, which has not been in the amount of times that other presidents have done it. Now, the White House is pushing back on this. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence is also pushing back on this reporting. But as you said, our colleagues have many, many sources who are telling us that this is something that is being looked into, that Tulsi Gabbard in particular is talking to experts inside and outside of the administration to think about ways to tailor this briefing so that President Trump can take in this information in a different way.
Yamiche, one more thing to talk about. Over the weekend, we saw the president repost another baseless conspiracy theory on Truth Social. This time, it was about former President Biden. And normally, we may not want to share such outlandish misinformation with our viewers, but the president does have nearly 10 million followers on social media, so it's on Truth Social, so it's important to set the record straight. Tell us, what did he say this time, and what kind of pushback are we seeing?
And I'll echo your caution here because we don't usually repeat something that is so outlandish and baseless. But the president reposted an online post without context, by the way. He didn't add any commentary to it. But the person that he reposted said that former President Biden had been executed and that he was actually replaced with clones and robots that were doing the job for him. Again, this is, of course, completely unfounded. President Biden has also been clear. Not only is he dealing with sort of the challenges of being out of office, but there's also this idea that the president is also dealing with prostate cancer right now and going through treatment for that. So it's really not only a baseless claim, but also a claim that is attacking someone who is going through a real health crisis. We don't know why President Trump reposted this. The White House is declining to comment, but this is not, of course, the first time that he's reposted baseless claims, and I'm sure it will not be the last. But President Trump has not been shy about spreading conspiracy theories. In some ways, it largely, in some ways, at least partly, if not largely, got him elected because a lot of his supporters do believe in the things that he says, whether they're baseless or true. So just another, I think, a chapter of President Trump saying something that just is not true, unfortunately.
All right, Yamiche,
Joe.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, in economic news, trade tensions between the U.S. and China appear to be worsening again. This is after Beijing pushed back against claims by Washington that it had broken last month's Geneva agreement, which paused tariffs for 90 days.
President Trump made the accusations on Friday. Then Beijing hit back overnight, calling the claims groundless. All this comes after the president announced that he is doubling import tariffs on steel and aluminum to 50%. Those new hikes slated to start on Wednesday.
NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us this morning. Of course, Brian, good morning. So just give us more detail here. What exactly the president is accusing Beijing of in their response?
Yeah, well, you'll recall that about 3 weeks ago, we thought that there had been a substantial de-escalation of the conversation between the United States and China after those conversations in Geneva, Switzerland, where the United States lowered the tariff rate from 145% to 30%, China doing the same in kind. But now here we are again with apparently talks breaking down between the United States and China. The Ministry of Commerce on the Chinese side putting out a statement over the weekend saying that they're disappointed disappointed with what the United States has done on issuing export controls on AI chips going to China. They also said that there was a stopping of the sale of chip design software to China, and they're unhappy about the revocation of Chinese student visas. And for that reason, they're also describing the conversation as having deteriorated, with the United States. Now, Kevin Hassett, a top economic advisor to the president, has suggested that there could be a call as soon as this week between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. Take a listen to what Hassett said on ABC this weekend.
President Trump, we expect, is going to have a wonderful conversation about the trade negotiations this week with President Xi. That's our expectation. I'm not sure if it's been scheduled at a specific date, but it has been discussed that the two of them will talk about the Geneva Agreement.
So it is going to happen this week, though? You're sure of that?
I'm not sure, George, because you never know in international relations. But my expectation is that both sides have expressed a willingness to talk.
So here at the beginning of that clip that we just played, he said there's going to be this phone call later on this week. But then he said, how international relations go, we don't really know for sure. But again, we'll see what this week plays out, whether or not that phone call happens.
And speaking of this week, we've got now the doubling of the tariffs on steel and aluminum. Talk about that and what the impact of that could be.
Yeah, so the tariffs had been in effect on steel and aluminum. This was not part of the, let's say, for example, the legal proceedings that we saw last week. Again, these types of Section 232 tariffs, without getting into it, were not impacted by that. But the president making a speech at a rally in Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh, where he was touting this $15 billion deal between Nippon Steel, the Japanese steel company that has been very controversially trying to get tied up with U.S. Steel, which the president greenlit essentially last week. He said that he was going to raise the tariffs to 50% to protect that new agreement, also to protect American steelworkers. But again, you have this concern here now that the top exporters to the United States that are outside of that agreement, like Canada, the European Union, and Brazil, what will they do in response to these tariff rates going up effective on Wednesday? The European Union already saying, guys, that they do plan on retaliatory measures if needed.
And Brian, tell us how markets are reacting, what this means for consumers to keep living through this uncertainty.
Yeah, well, here we are again with the start of market open in just a few hours, and it seems like Dow futures are in the red right now. We'll see what the trading day does bring us. But of course, as we've seen the story over the past few months and since inauguration, when tariff rates are ratcheted up, we see the stock market go down. When tariff rates go down, we see the stock market go back up. So again, we'll see what the week plays out, but it would be a very, very busy week in terms of headlines, I expect, on the tariff front.
All right, Brian, thank you.
Congress returns to Washington this week with a growing number of senators threatening to block President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. The House passed that massive tax cut and spending package last month. It's now facing pushback in the Senate over concerns about cuts to Medicaid and the impact on the national debt. If senators demand changes, the bill goes back to the House, and that could potentially delay House Speaker Mike Johnson's goal of getting the bill on Mr. Trump's desk by the 4th of July. NBC News Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker interviewed Speaker Johnson and asked him if Republicans can overcome their differences.
Hello there, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke to House Speaker Mike Johnson about criticism he faced from Elon Musk over the Big Beautiful Bill that passed the House.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
And Mr. Speaker, a number of Senate Republicans share Elon Musk's concerns that it will add to the debt and deficit. So how do you convince your Republican Senate colleagues to get on board and support this bill?
Well, I convinced my friends and colleagues by use of the facts. I sent a long text message to my good friend Elon Musk after he made those comments the other day to explain this is not a spending bill. This is a reconciliation package. It is reconciling a budget. So there is some additional spending, as you noted earlier at the opening, for national security, for historic investments in border security, the largest in generations, because those are necessary expenditures. But what my friends are missing is the tremendous and historic level of spending cuts that are also in the same package.
You can see my full interview and a whole lot more at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
Kristen, thank you.
For more on what is happening in Congress this week, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin. Julie, good morning. So this July 4th deadline gives lawmakers just over a month to try to get this bill ready for President Trump's signature. And like we said, more Senate Republicans are coming out against it. Who wants to see changes?
Yeah, hey, good morning, Savannah. Look, they have 4 weeks to get this bill passed in the Senate because Speaker Mike Johnson and the president set that July 4th deadline for when they want to see this package signed into law. The problem is, as you point out, many Senate Republicans want to change it. So the Senate Majority Leader, top Republican John Thune, is going to have to haggle essentially between those Republicans like Josh Hawley, who wants to see changes to the Medicaid work requirements, to some of the other Medicaid enforcements that House Republicans put in place. Rand Paul, he told me that the way that this bill contributes to the deficit, he will never vote for it, no matter how much pressure the president puts on him. Then you have Senators Lisa Murkowski, other Republicans who come from states that are heavy energy producers. They want to see some of those cleaner energy tax credits that were phased out by House Republicans back in this legislation. So a lot of different Senate Republicans who want to change a lot of different things. It's going to be up to John Thune and his leadership team to try and make sure it's not changed too much so then it has problems in the House.
Julie, the changes to Medicaid are one of the toughest policies for Republicans to defend right now. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have been expressing concerns about the addition of work requirements, new rules, more paperwork. It makes it more challenging for people to qualify, especially at a time when just the conversation around health insurance generally in this country has really led to a lot of frustration. How is Speaker Mike Johnson trying to defend this?
It's a challenging position for Johnson to defend, especially when you look at the majority of the states where people rely on these benefits. They come from rural red areas that Republicans represent. This is a lot harder for Senate Republicans to swallow, even more so than vulnerable House Republicans, because remember, they represent entire states. And so you have a lot less appetite politically and practically for the Senate. Mike Johnson, for his part, though, to your point, Savannah, defending this with Kristen Welker. Yesterday, you heard her talk about this a little bit, but he called these work requirements 20 hours per week, 80 hours per month, volunteer time, working, other things as well. He called these common sense. He said the millions of Americans that the Congressional Budget Office predicts will lose their health insurance coverage, won't lose it if they just follow along with these steps. So he's saying this is all about waste, fraud, and abuse, and that they're not cutting Medicaid. It's hard for them. It's hard for the American people to buy that, though.
Julie, on Friday, Senator Joni Ernst faced some angry voters in her home state of Iowa. I want to talk about this because some of the sound here is pretty stunning. She was defending cuts to benefits like we're talking about here, Medicaid, SNAP, things like that, particularly, though, when it comes to people who are undocumented. First, let's play a little bit of it.
They are not eligible, so they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die.
Julie, what is Senator Ernst saying about this?
Yeah, the ad just practically writes itself, and she is up for re-election in 2026. Like I said, a huge issue politically for Republicans. She did double down on her comments, though, posting a video on social media over the weekend from a cemetery. Watch this.
I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
We'll see if her sarcastic response there works. But again, huge issue for Republicans. We'll see if they can get this done and keep those Medicaid changes in the legislation.
A lot going on the Hill, as always. Julie, thank you.
Parts of the upper Midwest are under air quality alerts today as more than 90 wildfires burn across central Canada. Canadian officials say the fires are out of control. Roughly 17,000 people have been forced to evacuate in central Manitoba County. That smoke is now reaching the U.S. The National Weather Service here says some Americans may notice a campfire smell, hazy skies, and potentially redder sunsets and sunrises. The agency is issuing a warning for people in sensitive groups. We're talking about pregnant women, newborns, older adults, and those with respiratory or heart problems. They should all limit their time outdoors in these areas. Some of the most affected states over the weekend: Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North and South Dakota.
Well, if wildfires aren't enough, this week also marks the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season. Last year, Hurricanes Helene and Milton showed that storms can bring devastation hundreds of miles away from landfall. And now forecasters want more people to prepare evacuation plans. Even those who don't live on the coast. Meteorologist Chase Kane explains how climate change is putting more Americans at risk of flooding from hurricanes.
Hurricane Ian intensified rapidly in 2022. Climate change supercharged the Category 4 storm, which reshaped both the shoreline and people's perceptions of hurricanes. Florida State researchers found nearly half of evacuees left only hours before landfall, despite a remarkably accurate forecast from the National Hurricane Center.
And I wish we were evacuated even earlier than just the day or the hour, that morning of.
So you feel like the communication about evacuations could have been better or different?
Just a little better. And it really got down to the point where, okay, we were watching the news and said, mandatory to get out.
The storm is headed right to us.
Linda told me that warning from her local TV meteorologist is what nudged her family to leave, likely saving their lives because they returned to find their entire neighborhood leveled by Ian's storm surge.
Things for me have changed.
John Morales is a veteran meteorologist and hurricane specialist for NBC Miami. And because climate change is helping more hurricanes intensify more quickly, that's changing how he communicates with his viewers.
One of these days, people may not prepare like they should because they'll see the mundane tropical storm, say, oh, it's just, what's the worst that can happen? Maybe it'll be just a Cat 1. Well, one of the things about communicating the threat is those low probability, high impact events need to be talked about on air.
Fortunately, the National Hurricane Center's forecasts continue to improve, setting a record last year for the most accurate forecasts in their 70-year history.
So our ability to see these rapid intensifications has significantly advanced over the last several seasons. And even I sometimes am stunned at how rapidly we've progressed in this particular arena.
And those increasingly accurate forecasts from the NHC are important, whether you live right on the coast or even hundreds of miles inland, like the folks flooded by Helene last fall. And that's why heeding evacuation orders and listening to a trusted voice,
look at this eye,
can mean the difference in life and death.
As the threat of inland flooding from a hurricane continues to increase, if you are evacuating away from the coast, it's important to look at those longer forecasts and make sure that you're evacuating somewhere that's out of the path of the storm. I'm meteorologist Chase Kane.
Let's take a look at what to expect this week with your Morning News Now weather.
And today, the Today Show's Al Roker has an update for us. Hey, Al, good morning.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good Monday morning to you and to all your viewers and friends who are watching. Well, these wildfires in Canada bringing smoke and air quality alerts down to the lower 48. You can see Alpena, Chicago, all the way down to Jackson, Atlanta, where we've got down in the southeast Greenville, we've got air quality alerts, Minnesota, also on into the UP of Michigan. Now we've got another system that's developing in the southwest that's going to be bringing some heavy rain, some showers and thunderstorms. The storms will pick up in the afternoon on into the evening today, tonight, from Sioux Falls all the way down to Hayes, Amarillo, Woodward. We're looking at damaging hail, gusty winds of 65 miles per hour. Low tornado threat, so that's the good news. Tomorrow, these line of storms move from the Midwest all the way down to Texas, and this Gulf moisture is going to be producing heavy rain, possible flooding, because these areas have been seeing rounds of rain over the last at least 7 days. Tomorrow, the severe weather stretches from Cedar Rapids, Springfield, Oklahoma City, Wichita Falls, all the way down to Dallas. Isolated tornadoes can't be ruled out with that damaging hail and winds. And then Wednesday, severe storms, thunderstorms into the Midwest, heavy downpours through Florida. Some places in southern Florida could pick up 3 to 5 inches of rain. And in the Midwest, from Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Dallas, all the way up to Waterloo, we could be looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain as well. So we're going to be really tracking this severe weather over the next 72 hours. Joe, Savannah, back to you.
All right, Al, thank you so much.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, Pride pullback. LGBTQ plus groups seeing less support from corporate sponsors, why many say politics is to blame.
But up first, developing news, renewed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine as both sides intensify their attacks. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Ukrainian and Russian delegations arrived in Istanbul this morning for a second round of peace talks. This follows a weekend of deadly drone strikes from both countries. Overnight, Ukraine says Russia launched more than 80 air attacks across eastern regions. And that comes just one day after Ukraine launched that extraordinary large-scale drone attack that it says destroyed more than 40 aerial bombers deep inside Russia. A source in Ukraine's security service told NBC News that the operation, it was called Spiderweb, was in preparation for over a year and a half. New footage shared by the source shows Russian military airfields burning after the attacks. Now, Russia has acknowledged that several aircraft units caught fire and condemned the strike as a, quote, terrorist attack. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us with more. Raf, good morning. So Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is describing this attack as, quote, one for the history books. What more are we learning about this operation and the damage that it caused?
Savannah, good morning. Yeah, Zelensky saying it is absolutely brilliant. As you said, he says the Ukrainian intelligence services have been working on this for more than a year and a half. Here's what we know. Ukraine says 117 drones were launched from multiple locations across multiple time zones in Russia. So this was happening all over that vast country. And they are saying that they destroyed up to a third of Russia's strategic bombers. These are the very, very large aircraft that are capable of carrying cruise missiles, capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Ukraine estimates the damage totals some $7 billion. Zelensky is saying all of the Ukrainian agents who carried out this operation were safely extracted from Russia. And in a kind of moment of bravado, he's saying that one of the command centers for these agents was actually right next door to a local headquarters of the Russian intelligence services. Now, as you said, the Kremlin is calling this a terrorist attack. They are acknowledging that their air bases were hit. They are not saying what exactly they lost, but they are hitting back against Ukraine with drone and missile strikes of their own. Savannah.
Raf, as we mentioned, also a second round of peace talks between Ukraine and Russia began this morning in Istanbul. What demands are each side bringing to the negotiating table this time, and is there any hope that a deal gets done?
Yeah, so part of what's so complicated here is that Ukraine is being fairly transparent about what it wants, and Russia is not. So Zelensky posting on X, I'll read you just a little bit about what he says are Ukraine's demands. First, a full and unconditional ceasefire. Second, the release of prisoners. Third, the return of abducted children. And in order to establish a reliable and lasting peace and ensure security, preparation of the meeting at the highest level, the key issues can only be resolved by the leaders. What he's saying there is he wants to sit down across the table from Vladimir Putin and talk about how to end this war. There has been no indication from Putin that that is something that he is prepared to do. And when you hear the Russians address what conditions they would need to bring an end to this war, it sounds a lot like what Putin said back in February 2022, talking about a full demilitarization of Ukraine and assurances that it will never join NATO. Savannah.
Raf Sanchez, thank you for your reporting.
In other international news, over the weekend, U.S. Defense Secretary spoke about China's threat to Taiwan. His remarks come as China ramps up drills off Taiwan's coast. NBC News got a rare look at how the island is preparing for a potential conflict. Here's Janice Mackey-Frayer.
A new warning from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth about a potential war in Asia.
It has to be clear to all.
At a conference in Singapore, Hegseth said China was, quote, credibly preparing for an invasion of Taiwan. Here on the self-ruled island, Beijing claims as its own a race to overhaul defenses. Mandatory military service and reservist training have been extended. There's a sense of responsibility, this reservist says. Tension with Taiwan is ramping up, with Chinese forces staging regular drills around the island. And the use of force has not been ruled out. Fundamental to defenses here, billions of dollars in U.S. weapons, including missiles and upgraded aircraft, as well as U.S. intelligence. The biggest step yet, U.S.-made HIMARS, or high-mobility artillery rocket systems purchased by Taiwan, that can strike beyond China's coast.
The HIMARS systems are known for being mobile and precise. These are the same systems Ukrainian soldiers have been using to target Russian positions.
Less clear is whether the U.S. would intervene to defend Taiwan. President Trump has said Taiwan should pay us for defense. is why reservists like Alex Su are teaching civilians to defend themselves.
It's all about the training because we're training stuck in 1980s.
Much of Taiwan's military revamp is being influenced by the war in Ukraine. Tony Liu fought there as a volunteer and says the biggest challenge here is denial. No one wants war. I don't want it either, he says, but we may not have a choice. Officials in Taipei are looking to Washington for clues, while across the Taiwan Strait, China is watching. Janice Mackey-Frere, NBC News, Taipei.
Coming up, a warning for travelers headed overseas about an outbreak of the measles as it grows to the largest in years. What you need to know to stay healthy.
And it's a silent struggle impacting tens of millions of Americans. More on the movement to raise awareness of eating disorders. This is Morning News Now. We're back with a new health alert from the CDC. The agency is issuing a warning for Americans who are traveling abroad as measles cases surge across the U.S. It's the largest outbreak since 2019. NBC News correspondent Maya Eaglin has the details.
A new travel warning from the Centers for Disease Control as measles cases surge around the globe. The agency saying if you're traveling abroad, make sure you're vaccinated or consider postponing your trip.
The updated guidelines reflect that this is a global infection.
Cases popping up at airports, even on airplanes. Colorado health officials say 3 people with confirmed cases took a Turkish airline flight to Denver earlier this month. And there were other reported exposures at Newark, Chicago, and Seattle airports, raising alarms from health departments there.
This is the largest measles outbreak we've had since 2019.
Over 1,100 cases have been reported in the U.S. so far this year, according to our NBC News count. Common symptoms include rashes, runny noses, and fevers, which often pose a higher threat to young children and pregnant women.
Measles can be severe no matter what your age. You can have an infection of the lungs, swelling of the brain, known as encephalitis, and unfortunately death.
Measles spreads by someone infected coughing or sneezing.
If you have been exposed and you have been vaccinated, you should still present to a healthcare professional just to make sure that we can monitor you. If you have not had a vaccine, they can actually do what's called post-exposure vaccination.
The CDC says getting vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself. Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
Well, today is World Eating Disorders Action Day. It's a global movement that takes place every year to raise awareness, inspire action, and advocate for people who are impacted by these conditions.
Yeah, a report published by Harvard Health found nearly 30 million Americans will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. That number is likely much higher. Experts say eating disorders are vastly underdiagnosed and undertreated.
Joanna Candel joins us now for more on this. She is the founder and CEO of the National Alliance for Eating Disorders. Joanna, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for being here. And also, I mean, thank you. You've been so open. You have shared your own struggles with this that really persisted for quite a while, your journey to recovery. We know that experience inspired you to start the Alliance, but what inspired you to be public with your story?
You know, I think no one was talking about it. I had struggled with a disease that I never chose to have. And as I started my journey to recovery, I noticed that no one wanted to talk about it. And I had so much shame. And that made the journey to recovery that much harder. And so literally my last semester of undergrad, as I started to be a little healthier, I took out a loan and I moved back home and I opened the doors to the Alliance almost 25 years ago because I knew that nothing changes if nothing changes. And I knew that I wanted to talk to that 7th grade me who had struggled and felt like I didn't deserve to take up space or be seen.
Have a conversation that no one was probably having. I mentioned that Harvard Health study. Here's something else the report said. Someone dies as a direct result of an eating disorder every 52 minutes in the U.S.
Wow.
So tell us a little more about why then having an action day like this is so incredibly important.
I think there's so many misconceptions about eating disorders, that they are a disorder of choice, of vanity. They're no big deal. And then you hear that literally every hour someone loses their life. We need to have more awareness so that people don't have to struggle in silence. So if something is going on, that they're more likely to go for intervention and ultimately for care.
You just mentioned some of this, but tell us about the misconceptions or stereotypes that come along with this that your organization is working to combat. Like when you talk about, oh, it's just a vanity disorder, or I know I've done some reporting on, like, this only happens to girls.
Yeah,
that type
exactly.
of thing.
Number one, that they are a biologically based brain illness. It's not like you wake up one morning, look out the window, and say it's a beautiful day to have an eating disorder. And I think we have that old archaic stereotype of who develops eating disorders and what they look like, skinny, white, affluent girl. But we know that eating disorders do not discriminate between age, gender, race, class, that no one is immune to the development of eating disorders. And because we hold on to that misconception, so many people are not getting the intervention they need.
Support is so important. So let's talk about what are the things families, schools, employers that they can do to help out.
Yeah, I think more than anything, knowing that you don't have to be alone through this, that there are, clinicians and organizations and treatment centers that can help connect you to care and support you through this journey. That families did not cause this, but they can be the key in supporting their loved ones. And that, again, you don't have to go through this experience alone.
Quickly on this last one, but we must ask, how can anybody watching, maybe if they're struggling themselves or if they want to support somebody, how can they find that support? What can they do?
Absolutely. They can reach out to the National Alliance for Eating Disorders. We have a therapist-staffed hotline that's open Monday through Friday, and we have more than 21 free weekly therapist-led support groups.
Joanna Kendall, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really important message. As she just said there, if you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, we have this information on your screen now. Reach out to the National Alliance of Eating Disorders. Any of these ways listed here on your screen. Thanks again.
Coming up, scaling back. More companies showing less support for the LGBTQ+ community.
Up next, why advocates say shrinking sponsorships are threatening the fight for equal rights. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back and happy Pride. It is officially Pride Month, a time to recognize LGBTQ+ history and celebrate the community's progress in the fight for equal rights. But this year, organizations across the country are being forced to scale back some of their festivities. Several groups that plan Pride events say they're losing major corporate sponsorships to the tune of 6 figures. In fact, some saying they've lost up to $350,000 compared with last year. Now, while some companies are blaming the pullback on broader economic concerns, some Pride organization leaders are also pointing to what they say is a hostile political climate, specifically President Trump's crusade against DEI initiatives. CNBC reporter and producer Brandon Gomez joins us now more on this. Brandon, good to have you with us. Important topic to discuss because this is going to impact so many celebrations this month. I know you've spoken with several organizers and directors around the country reporting on this. What are they saying? What companies are cutting back, and why are those companies cutting back?
Yeah, and I think that's the important question, is the why just as much as the who, right? A lot of the Pride organizers, they don't necessarily want to name names in terms of who's pulling back because they're trying to preserve the relationships with these companies. But you do have companies like Diageo, Brown-Forman, Target, Walmart, Molson Coors. I mean, the list goes on, right? We've seen it in the last year, companies pulling back on broader diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then when you look at the specific reasons as to why they're pulling back, well, Diageo, which is the parent company of Guinness Beer and Smirnoff Vodka, is saying, look, we're going to let the brands do the work. We're still going to sponsor the events, but we're not going to cut a check to specific Pride organizations. Nissan, take them for example. They're saying we're looking at broader macro spending because we're concerned about political and economic uncertainty. Just like the consumers feeling the pressure, these corporate entities are as well.
Earlier this year, we covered what happened in Minnesota with Twin Cities Pride. Target initially pulled back on its DEI initiatives, and then Twin Cities Pride actually booted Target out of Pride.
The knife cuts both ways,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And then in return got a lot of fundraising. So a lot of these organizations I know are trying to make up for that money. What are they seeing?
Yeah, I mean, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in grassroots funding. I mean, it's interesting. This year, you have these Pride organizations getting back to their roots. There's been this pushback against rainbow washing, corporations just cutting a check, but not actually putting the work out there. And so you're seeing Pride organizations being able to return to their roots, turn to their local government officials as well. Washington, D.C. is going to be World Pride this year. It's going to be interesting to sort of see what that dynamic is like, given the political climate in the White House and what's actually going to be happening on the ground in the parade route.
It's actually happening in the backyard there, and those festivities really ramp up later this week. With these cuts to DEI or these attacks on DEI, just in general, how is the LGBTQ community feeling as we enter this Pride?
I think it goes back to that statement, right? There's been years of what has been called rainbow washing. So now the community comes back together and really focuses on what first motivated Pride festivities and celebrations to begin with. I think there is a lot of concern, the organizers that I'm speaking with, in terms of, perhaps safety, but they're saying safety is still a #1 priority. And, companies are saying we still are going to back our employees, even if we are not necessarily, like I said, cutting that check to sponsor these larger organizations that are putting on Pride.
And you mentioned something that's important because that money that the sponsors give, it doesn't just go to parades and parties. A lot of it goes to security, which is so vital at events like this. What are we seeing when it comes to security?
Yeah, what they're telling me is there's going to be no pullback in terms of that security spending. That is the priority. Yes, there may be one or two fewer stages or performances, but again, getting back to the heart of what Pride originally was intended to be, safety going to be a #1 priority when it comes to these celebrations.
All right, Brandon Gomez, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Happy Pride.
We've got some financial headlines now. Big airlines are expecting more than a little turbulence this year thanks to all that trade turmoil. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Yes, so global airlines are cutting their profit forecast this year, blaming what else? Trade tensions and a drop in consumer confidence. Now, they're also hitting out at delays in deliveries of new jets. The International Air Transport Association, which represents the industry, now expects airlines to report a combined profit of $36 billion this year. That's down slightly from previous forecasts, but it is still higher than last year as airlines are getting a boost from lower oil prices and record passenger numbers. All right, Samsung is reportedly close to a deal to invest in Perplexity AI and will integrate the startup's search technology in its upcoming devices. Now, Bloomberg says the companies are in talks to preload Perplexity's app and assistant on future smartphones and tablets and its search features into Samsung's web browser. The goal is to include the service as a default option in the Galaxy S26 phone that's set to launch in the first half of next year. And Google is giving 25 Pixel superfans a chance to attend its pre-launch event in London at the end of this month. Android Authority says that's according to a message sent to superfans on Friday. At its Pixel Penthouse, Google will give a sneak peek at its next generation devices and features, which will likely include the Pixel 10 and new earbuds, smartwatch, and tablet, guys.
All right, awesome. Silvana, thank you.
You got it.
Coming up, a fun trend turning beachcombers into artists.
Up next, we're going to take you to the Jersey Shore, where ordinary seashells are being transformed into extraordinary works of art. Morning News Now. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We are ending the hour with a Facebook group turned global art movement. Jersey Shore Shells was launched so people could share how they turn their beach finds into beautiful works of art.
I feel like we're at a spa right now. Now, with more than 80,000 members, reporter Ted Greenberg from our NBC News Philadelphia affiliate is cracking open the viral trend that is shelling out kindness.
John Spiek's pace these days isn't what it used to be. But on these walks, carrying a box of colorful shells, he feels a rush of joy.
I'm just so happy doing it.
The waterfront in Island Heights, just one of the many stops.
Hey, how you doing?
Where this new retiree and recipient of 4 recent surgeries leaves his creative creations to brighten the lives of others.
There's no other way to put it, just a great feeling.
The basement of John's Toms River home became a makeshift art studio and showcase for decorated shells.
This is therapy for me.
After he became part of the Facebook phenomenon called Jersey Shore Shells early last year.
I did a little research, joined the group, and fell in love with the shells.
The idea is simple. Collect shells from local beaches.
Journals.
Turn them into works of art, then put the shells in all sorts of places for other people to find.
I made a group and I thought, well, if I get a few hundred people, that would be so cool.
Carissa Chapkowski founded Jersey Shore Shells more than 5 years ago.
I didn't realize there'd be like so many other people out there that thought that this was a good idea.
Photos from both the creators and those who come across the shells are shared online.
What really got me is when people were posting pictures of my shells. It's like, wow, they were found. And I've been hooked ever since.
I'm told the shells have been hidden and found along the entire Jersey Shore, from Sandy Hook to Cape May and well beyond. They've turned up in many other states, too, even around the globe.
That's the thing we all should do in the world, is try and make people happy, you know?
John grew up listening to the Beatles.
This is my favorite shell right here. It's a logo of John Lennon and Imagine.
He says he'll never part with it.
I'm nowhere near an artist, but look at the logo, how good it came out. It's like he was actually guiding my hand.
John's made his mark on well over 200 shells so far. A creative outlet that's busting stress.
I do it just to relax.
And fueling smiles along the way.
How neat is that?
That is very cool.
And like a treasure hunt for anybody who's seen that story now can go look for him. Ted Greenberg, thank you so much for sharing that story.
I love the bright colors, too.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks so much for starting your week with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, tragedy and terror at a pro-Israel rally in Boulder, Colorado. Authorities say 8 people were wounded and burned when a man shouting "Free Palestine" fired off what's been described as a makeshift flamethrower into the crowd. The harrowing witness accounts and what we now know about the man at the center of a terrorism investigation. Also this morning, fresh fallout from the latest escalation in President Trump's global trade tirade. Some economists now cautioning that a newly announced surge on imported steel tariffs could once again hit Americans where it hurts, at the grocery store. So what does it mean for your bottom line? For watching your wallet. Plus, we've also got our eyes on the skies as millions across the Midwest wake up under suffocating air quality alerts. The source of the smoke? Those widespread Canadian wildfires burning out of control. It's got some officials now sounding the alarm over bone-dry conditions as we dive into those scorching summer months. And it's the furry viral sensation that's got folks across the nation waiting in long lines just for a chance to buy what is behind the humble Labubu's rise to global stardom. We're going to show you what all the hype is about later in the hour.
These really are. They're hanging from people's belt loops, purses. They're everywhere.
They are. Okay.
Show's not convinced.
I am skeptical. They're just a little frightening to me. That's
I know.
all.
They are a little, like, sinister.
That's my issue, but all right. Let's begin this hour in Boulder, Colorado, where a man is in custody and potentially facing 2 counts of first-degree murder following that attack at a march.
The incident happened yesterday during this demonstration. It was calling for the return of the Israeli hostages who are being held by Hamas. The suspect has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon of El Paso County, Colorado. He's also facing several other charges, including attempted murder and first-degree assault. Officials say Solomon shouted "Free Palestine" and used a makeshift flamethrower during the attack. Police say 8 people were injured. The FBI says the incident is being investigated as an act of terrorism. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest from Boulder.
Just stay away. Just stay away.
In Boulder, Colorado, a chilling act of violence.
There is a male with a blowtorch setting people on fire.
An attacker who police say Sunday afternoon unleashed a makeshift flamethrower into a peaceful crowd.
It was about 20 feet long of this linear spray of fire.
Overnight, authorities identifying the suspect as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Solomon. The suspect attacking a weekly rally at a downtown pedestrian mall, calling for the return of the remaining hostages in Gaza. Police say he shouted "Free Palestine." According to 2 senior law enforcement officials, Solomon is an Egyptian national. They believe he acted alone. 8 people ranging in age from 52 to 88 taken to a hospital, some with serious burns.
It is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Officers nearby arrested the suspect. Witnesses rushing with buckets of water to help the multiple injured.
Sadly, attacks like this are becoming too common across the country.
As the war in Gaza continues following the attacks by Hamas on October 7th, 2023, anti-Semitic attacks in the U.S. rose for the 4th consecutive year, up a record 12%. Just 2 weeks ago, 2 Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed outside a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C.
Free Palestine!
Federal officials say the suspect shouted afterwards, "I did it for Palestine," "I did it for Gaza." And in April, a man throwing Molotov cocktails into Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's house just hours after his family held Passover dinner. For those in Colorado who witnessed the terror, a familiar fear setting in.
This is how history repeats itself, and this is probably the scariest, most frustrating, terrifying thing, not just for me and my wife, but for my kids and for all of our community.
Our thanks to Morgan Chesky for that report.
For more on the attack, we're now joined by Brian Horowitz, who witnessed what happened. We're also joined by Omer Shahar, who witnessed what happened and is an organizer with the group Run for Their Lives that held that march. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Brian, let's start with you. I know you were eating lunch with your family near where this march was taking place. Walk us through what you saw and then how you sprung into action.
Yeah, good morning, and I hope you're doing okay. We were eating lunch. We saw the group walking down Pearl Street and then back up. Heard a person or two yell out "Free Palestine" at them a couple of times. They're obviously doing this typically in a very low key, very calm, peaceful way. And then it wasn't until about 10 minutes after they passed us over at the food hall that we heard a woman come over and start yelling to us, saying someone was throwing fire at different people over at the courthouse, which is obviously something that I had potentially anticipated as someone who's wanted to participate in these types of events in the past. But just kind of my family's never really felt comfortable or I guess really courageous enough to go and be part of these things with anticipation of something like this potentially happening. I jumped up, ran 100 yards to then go and see if I could do whatever I could to help.
Omer, let's bring you in here. So your group, Run for Their Lives, you've been holding these demonstrations fairly regularly, we understand, in the wake of the Hamas attack on Israel in 2023. We keep using different words, sort of like rally, demonstration, but it sounds like, for all intents and purposes, it was a peaceful walk. Brian just described it as low-key. Tell us about these events and then your perspective yesterday, what you saw.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Run for the Lives is a peaceful, non-political initiative. We are walking every week in main streets like Pearl in Boulder. This initiative started in California back in October 23, a couple of weeks after the massacre in Israel on October 7th. And here in Colorado, we're doing it since November 23, every week. We are saying it every time when we start to walk. It's a peaceful, non-political demonstration, not to engage. We're not seeking interaction with anyone. We are walking with the posters of the hostages, Israelis and not Israelis, Jewish and not Jewish. And this is the purpose of our walk.
Omer, these are people you know. How are you doing this morning? How are people in your group doing?
Yeah, those people became my community for the past year and a half. It's terrifying to see that, to see them in flames, injured. We have still 2 in the hospital. We are praying for their health, for their recovery. I think that it will be very hard for the Jewish community here, for the Boulder community here. And we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Brian, you just mentioned a moment ago that you haven't attended something like this. You and your family, you haven't been comfortable. You've been concerned about an incident like this happening. What's going through your mind as you process what happened and then seeing it firsthand? How do you feel moving forward, the ability to support this community?
You know, it's tough. I've probably been about as outspoken as you possibly can be amongst my friends, my family, about everything since everything happened on October 7th. We're a Jewish family ourselves. It's really just, we have a family. I have a family of 2 toddler boys, and it's just something that we kind of weigh the cost benefit. And I think moving forward is, if anything, it emboldens me. It makes me want to attend these types of things more, speak out a bit more, do these interviews a bit more. I don't know that I will attend these events in the future, but it's certainly something that's more so out of consideration of my wife. But it's certainly something that I think anytime something like this happens, it just brings the Jewish community even closer together rather than breaks them and brings us further apart.
Brian and Omer, thank you very much for your time on a difficult morning. We will be thinking about you and checking in with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This morning, President Trump is defending his trade tariffs despite the policy facing an uncertain future in the courts. Comes as the president doubled tariffs on steel imports now to 50%.
In the meantime, trade tensions between the U.S. and China deteriorated overnight after Beijing pushed back against claims by the U.S. that it violated last month's Geneva Agreement. We have NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans on this with us. Hi, Christine. Good morning.
Good morning. A lot of moving parts on the trade front after really a month, frankly, when a lot of people thought that there was de-escalation on the trade front. The president doubling down, saying tariffs are the tool that he wants. His administration really clear about that. In the meantime, China is trading blame with the U.S. for a lack of progress on that front.
This morning, the future of President Donald Trump's major tariffs in question. After back and forth in the courts, with the tariffs in place for now, but the legal battle continuing. The president doubling down, posting yesterday, if the courts somehow rule against us on tariffs, which is not expected, that would allow other countries to hold our nation hostage. This would mean the economic ruination of the United States of America. The White House vowing tariffs will continue no matter what.
Tariffs are not going away. He has so many other authorities that even in the weird and unusual circumstance where this was taken away, we just bring on another or another or another.
And another front of the trade war may be heating back up after consumers saw rising prices from clothes to electronics to home goods during the escalating tariffs between China and the U.S. Both sides temporarily reduced taxes and tensions last month while negotiations went on. But overnight, China weighing in, saying the U.S. has taken actions that, quote, seriously violate the talks. Just days after Mr. Trump claimed China had totally violated its agreement with the United States. It comes as President Trump plans to raise more tariffs this week on steel imports.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States.
U.S. manufacturers currently import about a quarter of their steel from overseas. With this new tariff increase, they would pay more for production costs to build cars, home appliances, furniture, and tools. Economists say the higher tariff could also drive up the cost of canned goods, making groceries more expensive. Before he took office, Mr. Trump promised to bring down grocery prices.
People can't afford their groceries, and they're going to be affording their groceries very soon.
So experts tell us things like canned soup, canned tuna, those are things that'll start to cost more because those cans have imported steel and aluminum in particular in them. But the president's point is that if you don't want a tariff, make it in the U.S. It may take some time for the U.S. industry to increase its capacity, but that is the goal there. Economists also tell us there's tractors and trucks and travel that also involve a lot of metals. So even if it's not the can your food is in, food costs could rise as well. So that's what we'll be watching in the months ahead.
Oh, God, so much to watch for.
I know.
Thanks, Christine. Well, peace talks between Ukraine and Russia are underway in Istanbul this morning as both countries are stepping up their drone campaigns. Following a night of heavy bombardment on Saturday where Russia launched more than 400 drones, Ukraine launched a large-scale drone attack deep inside Russia that it says destroyed more than 40 aerial bombers. A source in the security service of Ukraine shared footage with NBC News that shows smoke billowing from Russian airfields. Russia condemned the operation as a, quote, terrorist attack and acknowledged that several aircraft units caught fire. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now from Dubai with more on this. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. One Russian military blogger this morning describing this Ukrainian attack as Russia's Pearl Harbor, escalatory language that suggests slim hopes for the peace talks now underway in Turkey. Overnight, images of burning Russian bombers, a blow to Russia's military prestige and capability, and one of Ukraine's most significant strikes of the war. Just as President Putin and President Zelensky send delegations back to the negotiating table, Ukrainian officials say 34% of Russia's cruise missile-carrying aircraft were hit. Nuclear capable, for years they have carried out terrifying raids on Ukrainian cities. Zelensky today calling it an absolutely brilliant result. The attacks, thousands of miles away in Siberia and other regions, were codenamed Spiderweb by the Security Service of Ukraine, which says it struck 41 Russian aircraft, including strategic bombers and command and control planes. The plan, like something from a spy thriller, took 18 months and involved smuggling drones into Russia. The drones then hidden in makeshift wooden cabins, mounted on cargo trucks, the roof opening remotely. And Ukraine says its operatives escaped Russia without capture. Russia, calling it a terrorist attack, says the strikes were, quote, repelled, and that it has detained some involved. Meanwhile, this weekend, a rail bridge and a road bridge in Russia collapsed after explosions, killing at least 7. While in Ukraine, a combined Russian drone and artillery attack in Kherson left a 71-year-old woman dead, Ukraine says. A war as active as ever, even as ceasefire talks resume. And ahead of today's talks, Secretary Rubio spoke with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, by phone. Savannah, amid the high-stakes diplomacy, the Russians have been suggesting another US-Russia prisoner exchange is possible. Savannah?
All right, Keir, thank you.
Karen Reed's legal team is set to call its next witness today in her murder retrial. The Massachusetts woman is accused of killing her ex-boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. On Friday, the defense's first witness cast doubt on a timeline laid out by a key witness from the prosecution. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has been following the trial and joins us with the latest.
Hey there, guys. Good morning. While Karen Reed is the one on trial here, her legal team is hoping to turn the focus of this case now into their alternative theory of what really happened to her boyfriend that night, putting a local police department now under scrutiny.
Could you tell me your name, please?
Kelly Dever.
A new witness for Karen Reed's defense set to take the stand this morning. Former Canton police officer Kelly Dever, who didn't testify in Reed's closely watched first trial last year that ended in a hung jury. Dever, a potentially key witness this time around, as Reed's defense team hopes to convince the jury police in their close-knit town tried to frame her.
Karen, you feel great. You feel great.
Reed appearing in high spirits despite facing the possibility of life behind bars if convicted of hitting her former Boston police officer boyfriend John O'Keefe with her SUV and fleeing the scene back in 2022.
The evidence of collision is abundant.
Reed's defense team says she dropped O'Keefe off at a house party filled with law enforcement, and now they are trying to cover up their own wrongdoing.
What evidence have they proven that Karen Reed intended to kill or harm John O'Keefe, or that she intended to leave him for dead in the snow? The answer is none.
Last week, the defense moving to throw out the charges entirely after the prosecution rested its case.
No reasonable jury could find Karen Reed guilty.
A request the judge denied. On Friday, Reed's attorneys called their own accident reconstruction expert to the stand, who analyzed data from Reed's SUV and O'Keefe's phone.
What did you find in terms of any data regarding a collision?
Neither of the events that occurred on that date were triggered by a collision.
But Matthew DeSagra faced fierce cross-examination.
You're not testifying or offering an opinion that there was no collision with this car that night, are you?
No.
Reed, who has a small army of supporters actively engaging with some of them outside the courthouse.
And they're here every day, and I can't tell you what this does to my spirits every day.
Even as prosecutors have tried to use her own words in interviews against her this time around.
At the same time, the defense trying to get in a number of text messages that involved the former lead detective on this case. They're using other people who were in group chats with him, hoping to get that in. The judge expected to rule on that this week.
All right, Laura, thank you.
Well, in the Midwest, communities from Minnesota to Missouri are facing air quality alerts this morning as smoke from wildfires in Canada dives deep into the U.S. The National Weather Service is warning sensitive groups, that includes older adults or those with respiratory issues, to limit their time outdoors as the smoke brings hazy skies to the region. This comes as the South is bracing for possible hail and tornado outbreaks. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist is live in Chicago with more on this. Hey, Aaron, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. We were supposed to have a crystal clear sky here in Chicago today, but there is a little bit of a haze out here that's blunting the sunshine and the blue skies here. The air quality levels are a little bit lower here as well. You go to other places like Fargo, North Dakota, also in this region, their air quality is unhealthy today. That's something that's really being driven by these wildfires that are still raging in Canada now. They're sending that smoke hundreds of miles south and also smothering parts of the U.S. This morning, some of the nation's midsection tinted with a milky haze as wildfires burn out of control in Canada, smoke being blown across the border for days.
It's sure smoky in Minnesota today.
Those aren't clouds, that's Canadian smoke.
That smoke rising from wildfires burning more than 1 million acres across several Canadian provinces, some for weeks now.
Embers flying.
With little to no containment on dozens of blazes, Canada has ordered evacuations. And as satellite images show smoke stretching far into the U.S., states like North Dakota, Michigan, and Illinois telling residents to pay attention to air quality. Minnesota issuing a red air quality alert through this evening.
That smoke is just basically sitting right at the lowest part of the atmosphere where we live, and so degrading air quality pretty significantly.
The haze a clear concern for officials ahead of summer's dangerous fire season.
Is this something that you all anticipate could be a longer-term issue?
We're basically the earliest we've ever seen it starting up this year.
After wild weather whipped through the East Coast,
Please don't come this way.
Even forming this water spout over the Potomac River in Maryland. Parts of the plains on alert today for a severe weather threat with damaging wind, large hail, and even tornadoes possible. Now, back here in the Midwest, the big question is, when are things going to clear out, right? We know that the smoke and some of the lower air quality are issues that are going to persist through the day today into tomorrow in some parts of this region. What folks are really waiting for is the wind to change direction in a significant way, or for the Canadians to get a handle on those wildfires that have been burning again, in some cases for weeks, Savannah. We know over the weekend the U.S. did send equipment, a tanker, as well as 150 firefighters and support personnel to help out the Canadians. Savannah?
Aaron, thank you.
And with that, let's take a look at your morning news now weather.
We have Today Show co-anchor Al Roker with the latest with us. Hey, Al, good morning.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good Monday morning to you and to all your viewers and friends who are watching. Well, these wildfires in Canada bringing smoke and air quality alerts down to the lower 48. You can see Alpena, Chicago, all the way down to Jackson, Atlanta, where we've got down in the southeast Greenville, we've got air quality alerts, Minnesota, also on into the UP of Michigan. Now we've got another system that's developing in the southwest that's going to be bringing some heavy rain, some showers and thunderstorms. The storms will pick up in the afternoon on into the evening today, tonight. From Sioux Falls all the way down to Hayes, Amarillo, Woodward, we're looking at damaging hail, gusty winds of 65 miles per hour. Low tornado threat, so that's the good news. Tomorrow, these line of storms move from the Midwest all the way down to Texas, and this Gulf moisture is going to be producing heavy rain, possible flooding, because these areas have been seeing rounds of rain over the last at least 7 days. Tomorrow, the severe weather stretches from Cedar Rapids, Springfield, Oklahoma City, Wichita Falls, all the way down to Dallas. Isolated tornadoes can't be ruled out with that damaging hail and winds. And then Wednesday, severe storms, thunderstorms into the Midwest, heavy downpours through Florida. Some places in southern Florida could pick up 3 to 5 inches of rain. And in the Midwest, from Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Dallas, all the way up to Waterloo, we could be looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain as well. So we're going to be really tracking this severe weather over the next 72 hours. Joe, Savannah, back to you.
All right, Al, thank you so much. Much more to come on this Monday edition of Morning News Now. A little later, why an unassuming, fuzzy little monster is now fetching some major moolah for resellers online. First, after the break, snuffed out. France's relationship with smoking set to come to an end, while the nation is now banning the harmful habit in many outdoor public spaces. Those stories and more next. Back now with developing news this morning out of the Middle East. Several Palestinians have been killed in a new round of Israeli strikes on Gaza. NBC's Raf Sanchez joins us from London for more on that and some other international headlines. Raf, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Yeah, hospital officials in northern Gaza are saying 14 people at least were killed in a round of Israeli airstrikes this morning, and that the vast majority of them were women and children. Separately, Palestinian officials say at least 31 people were killed at an aid site in southern Gaza yesterday. Multiple eyewitnesses tell NBC News that Israeli forces opened fire on the crowd. The Israeli military says its troops did not shoot at civilians, quote, near or within the aid distribution site. And the American NGO behind it says aid was handed out without incident. In Poland, a shock result in the country's presidential election. Initial exit polls put the liberal mayor of Warsaw on course for a narrow victory, but with all votes counted, it was actually the conservative candidate, Karol Nawrocki, who emerged on top with just over 1 percentage point. The results set up a potential clash between the country's new right-wing president and its centrist prime minister. And finally, in Thailand, Pride Month is underway with a major parade in Bangkok. It's the first Pride since the country legalized same-sex marriage earlier this year. Thailand's actually the first country in Southeast Asia to recognize same-sex marriage and only the third country in all of Asia. So, Joe, I think it is safe to assume it is going to be quite the party this year in Bangkok.
Looks like a good celebration there. All right, Raf, thank you so much. In other international news, France, yes, France is preparing for a sweeping ban on smoking. The European country that once glamorized tobacco use is set to ban smoking in most public outdoor places. That includes beaches and parks. The ban seeks to protect spaces where children may gather, and violation of the ban could result in a fine of more than $150. NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now. It's from London. We didn't get to send her to Paris on this one, but still, Molly, good morning. Good to see you.
Hey, Joe, would have gone, hand is up. But this is the most sweeping ban yet. And I think one of the things you just said in your intro is so interesting. I think a lot of Americans, when they go to Europe, were surprised by how much Europeans still smoke. So this is a major change to the vibe, the smell, and most importantly, of course, to the health of public spaces in France. And believe it or not, a lot of recent polling shows widespread support for this ban, even among those who still smoke cigarettes. Take a look.
For Americans visiting Paris, some things are iconically French. There's the River Seine, the Eiffel Tower, the fashion, the croissants, and of course, the smoking.
But you know that I don't smoke. Well, it's never too late to start.
But that pungent culture shock will be far less visible nationwide this summer. Come July 1st, the freedom to smoke stops where children's right to breathe clean air starts, declared the French health ministry last week. No more smoking in public parks, sports facilities, gardens, bus stops, or any areas close to schools, and no cigarettes on the beach. The fine, a whopping 135 euros, just over $150. But for the country that made lighting up super cool an aspirational act of sexiness, the deadly habit has been hard to snuff out. For more than a century, cigarettes have been ubiquitous on the silver screen. The iconic Brigitte Bardot in the 1950s and 60s was rarely without one. But the move comes as French smoking hits a historic low. Some 23% of French adults smoke daily. Compare that to 11.6% of American adults back in 2022. American Sage Van Alstine has lived in Paris for 3 years.
I don't like cigarette smoke. I don't enjoy being around it. And living here, I am around it a lot, whether I'm out on a terrace drinking a glass of wine, strolling through Jardin des Tuileries in the park. It's surrounding me.
Even still, the French League Against Cancer finds wide support for the new ban. It's a bit of a shame, this woman says, but you have to do it. It's an important public health issue, this man adds, so for the common good, it's better.
Now, the ban is really targeting young people. Joe, the health ministry says 90% of French people who still smoke today start before they're 18. So they're not ruling out expansion of this ban or even putting in age restrictions for the sale of cigarettes. The stated goal is a tobacco-free generation, which means French Gen Z are finding other ways compared to their parents and grandparents to be très chic. Joe?
Interesting shift. I have to admit, though, I was in Paris earlier this year and was stunned how many people still smoke there.
And even more so in Italy and Spain. I find it surprising every time I go, Joe.
All right. We've got to do another trip to do some more research. Molly, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, a serious new health warning coming straight from the CDC this morning. What summer travelers need to know about America's ongoing measles crisis and the precautions top health officials are now urging flyers to take before they get on board. That's up next. Today, health officials are urging travelers to take precautions as the ongoing measles outbreak spreads to airplanes and major travel hubs. Comes as families nationwide are trying to make sense of the government's changing guidelines when it comes to vaccines. NBC's Liz Kreutz is at LAX Airport in Los Angeles with more. Liz, good morning.
Hi, Joe. Good morning. Yeah, local health officials are sounding the alarm about the spread of measles while traveling. In fact, LA's very first case of 2025, that person traveled right here through LAX. And in Colorado, there are now 3 confirmed cases of passengers that were on the very same flight landing in Denver. This is health officials are saying if you have not been vaccinated for this contagious virus, you may want to postpone or reconsider travel until you get the vaccine.
With summer vacations quickly approaching, a serious and concerning new travel warning from the CDC, urging travelers not to fly unless they're vaccinated against the measles.
And that's a significant shift that reflects that global cases of measles are rising.
The agency cautioning that travelers can catch measles in hubs like airports and train stations, as well as airplanes and trains or at crowded events. The Denver airport is the latest hotspot for the virus after officials confirmed 3 travelers from the same flight into Denver airport contracted measles, including a child under 5 years old. There have now been over 1,100 cases of measles across 33 states, according to the latest NBC News count. The epicenter of the outbreak remains West Texas, where cases have climbed to over 700 since January.
We will see these cases stop. But unfortunately, there's just going to be so much infection and deaths along the way. And it frustrates me because the vaccine, especially 2 shots, it's about 97% effective.
Even some places with no reported measles cases like San Diego hosting a free vaccination clinic to ensure it stays that way.
Can't prevent it from happening, can't prevent them from getting sick, but the vaccinations help mitigate the overall of the sickness.
Meanwhile, questions remain about the government's latest advice on vaccinations for COVID. Last week, the Health and Human Services Secretary said the CDC would no longer recommend the vaccine for healthy children and pregnant women. But the CDC's updated immunization schedule, published just days later, contradicted his statement, saying healthy kids over 6 months should get it. Experts say young children and pregnant women face high risks from the virus.
Now, there is still no recommendation that pregnant women should get COVID vaccines. As for healthy children, there is one caveat, and that is that the CDC is saying that children can get the vaccine based on what they're calling shared clinical decision making. Essentially, children can get it if both the parents and doctor agree. Joe.
All right, Liz, thank you so much. A lot of questions. Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel with more on all this. So, Dr. Patel, staying with COVID, what do you make of the apparent difference here we're seeing in the guidance between the CDC and the Trump administration? How should parents interpret all this?
Yeah, I think it leaves parents and honestly, Joe, clinicians confused because there's contradicting guidance, as Liz mentioned in her piece. I do think that the bottom line is that you need to have a conversation with a health professional if you are a healthy pregnant woman. And I would highly encourage the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has already put out a statement that they recommend all pregnant women get the COVID vaccine. There actually have been trials done that included pregnant women and there were no adverse events and it showed a large benefit. And then if you're a parent with a healthy child under the age of 18, you're also going to need to have a conversation. But again, the American Academy of Pediatrics also recommended that children, healthy children, including young ones, especially who are at risk of hospitalizations and death, that they also get the COVID shots. But it's going to get, unfortunately, tricky as we're waiting for more detailed guidance in writing. So far, it's been videos, social media, and a CDC website that indicates it should be done with a conversation with your doctor.
Yeah, and this comes as the World Health Organization monitors a new COVID variant that's now been reported here in the U.S. What should we know about this?
Right. So this is not surprising that we're seeing new variants. And so this is NB181. It's on the heels of what's already the dominant variant across the world called LP81. All those numbers and letters mean is that we're seeing genetic differences that are different from the previous strains. There are no signs right now today, Joe, that in the United States or even globally that one is causing more of a potential problem in terms of disease or hospitalization. So this is something that we're going to closely monitor. And especially as we enter into what we expect will be a busy winter season with lots of viruses, including COVID, it's just another reminder that you need to kind of take precaution. Nobody wants to miss work or school because they're sick. And these are one of the many reasons that people could do that. Vaccines can help, but if you get symptoms, see a doctor.
Very quickly, we want to talk about measles. Someone say if they have a trip coming up, they're planning to fly, everything's booked, it's paid for, they're not vaccinated against measles. What's your advice?
Bottom line, if you're not vaccinated and must travel, get at least one dose right away. You can even see effectiveness as soon as 2 weeks with just the one dose of the MMR vaccine. And here's what's critical. Under the age of 12 months, normally we would not initiate this MMR measles series. And the CDC recommends that. Any international travel.
All right, Dr. Patel, good to have you with us. Thank you. Coming up, it is a fuzzy little thing that's got shoppers and retailers and resellers running wild this morning. When Morning News Now returns, why social media is going positively loony over a humble toy called Labubu, selling out stores across the globe and punching up price tags online. That's next. Stay with us. We're back now with a look at the latest obsession taking over social media. It's a viral plush toy called a Labubu. They're all over TikTok. You may have seen them clipped into backpacks and purses or clipped onto our business correspondent, Brian Shung, who joins us now. So is it cute? Is it cringe?
I
scare me a
cute.
Little.
You're scared a little bit?
A little bit.
Well,
I said last week it's like if a gremlin and a Cabbage Patch Kid had like a little baby.
Yeah, I heard Where the Wild Things Are. That's another reference.
That,
but look, these are cute, slightly creepy. I think they're elves, but they're so coveted that people are waiting in hours-long lines across the country just to buy them. And now there's resellers and even fakes, although these here are real. So to understand how Labubu dolls took the world by storm, we went hunting for one ourselves to see if we could score one. What's Fuzzy got 9 teeth and has people going absolutely crazy.
Oh my God. I got my Labubus their own Labubus.
Meet Labubu, created by Hong Kong designer Ga Sing Leung and sold by Chinese brand Pop Mart. The so-called monsters are sold in blind boxes, meaning you don't know what Labubu is inside.
Oh my gosh!
The dolls, which are usually listed for $22, are now in some cases fetching hundreds of dollars on resale sites. People waiting on long lines for hours just to get their hands on the little monsters. So why the sudden craze? Attribute it to all the biggest celebrities flaunting their Labubus, starting with Blackpink's Lisa and followed by Rihanna, Dua Lipa, Simone Biles, and actress Emma Roberts, who scored big this weekend.
Okay, you guys, my dream finally came true. God, I love her.
Lizzo even giving the dolls a mention in a new verse.
Can't even outdress my Labubu.
And NBA players showing the world their Labubu love.
Put a damn bunny on your
Like Beanie Babies, Trader Joe's totes, and Stanley Cups, Labubus are now having their own moment, with their popularity boosting Pop Mart into an almost $40 billion company, as Labubu-related Google searches spiked over 5,000% in just the last month. Okay, so full disclosure, I was gifted a Labubu by a friend recently, but she said she had a really difficult time finding one, so I figure let's give it a shot ourselves. Let's try to buy a Labubu. First stop, the Pop Mart vending machine, where just 15 minutes after the mall opened, the Labubus sold out. You got lucky today.
But yeah, I got lucky with this one at least.
Turns out he scored the last one. You can see here they've got all these different dolls in stock, but what's sold out are the Labubus. Next stop, the Pop Mart store, where the deviant dolls are in their display cases, but unavailable for sale. So unfortunately, they are out of these right now. You have to actually reserve it online and then come and pick it up. They don't have any just on site, so we're gonna have to try somewhere else. I wasn't the only one who was striking out. How would you describe the difficulty in getting them now?
It's really hard. He has to get them for me.
Those lusting for Labubus taking a gamble. Some people are even having to resort to playing claw games to get one of these, which means we're going to take a shot at it. All right, wait, do we get another shot at this? We met Allison, who got a lot luckier than I did.
Finally, I got one. I want to show you guys.
You want to show me? Okay.
Oh my God!
Look at it. What are you going to name it?
I'm going to name it maybe Vanilla.
Vanilla? It was clear from the many Labubus we saw in the wild that a major reason for the Labubu love is playing dress up.
How'd you get yours so swagged out? So I got this chain at like an arts and crafts store.
And no joke, there are entire stores dedicated to accessorizing those little demon dolls down to the designer.
Her name is Zizi. So because she's sleeping, I feel like we want to make her cozy.
So we have this, and then we have a gray shark one, I believe.
The obsession even turning into a family affair for some.
I'm having a party, a Pop Mart party for my birthday.
A Labubu themed
unboxing.
But we still didn't finish our mission to buy a new Labubu for the show. But finally, at a hobby store, it happened.
There's only one left.
Thank you so much. Proud Labubu owner right here.
Wow, at a hobby store. Who knew?
Yeah. Yep. And that's the one that you're holding is the one that I purchased.
Wow.
Yep.
This is
it's drinking a Coke.
See, that's where you find these.
It loves
Not
soft drinks.
That claw game's a scam.
No,
so you're
it's
never
always
going to get in.
yeah.
I don't know. How
I took a huge L on that
one. Crawled in the machine and got it, I think. All right. So are there fakes going around? What should we know about that?
Yeah. So there are some fakes going around, and a good way to tell if your Labubu is what they call a Lafufu. First off, check it. That's what they're calling it. Check the QR code on the tag. If the QR code takes you to a website that tells you it's authentic from the Pop Mart site, then it is authentic. But another good way is to count the amount of teeth. This sounds really strange. 9 teeth means that it's legit. If it's less or more than that, it's probably a Lafufu.
So if it's a fake, they can't put 9 on it?
Well, I mean, you know, they could also check for the, they say the color of the cheeks.
Oh,
apparently
wow.
the rosy cheeks is a clear indicator of a legit
Rosy
Labubu.
cheeks and 9 teeth.
Yeah.
All right. That was educational, Brian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Joe.
All right, we've got more money news now. All that midnight doom scrolling getting a little tougher for kids in Nebraska. CNBC's Savannah now has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. Yes, so Nebraska's governor signing a law on Friday to limit how kids can use social media. It will require companies to offer time limits on usage, restrict certain categories of content, and provide chronological feeds instead of algorithmic ones that promote constant scrolling. The act also restricts companies to collecting the minimum amount of personal data from younger users and more tools for parents to limit how kids use their accounts. The law goes into effect in January. All right, Meta reportedly plans to shift the task of assessing risk for its products to AI from human reviewers. NPR says internal documents note the company aims to have 90% of risk assessments fall on AI and is considering using AI reviews even in areas such as youth risk and integrity, which covers violent content and misinformation. Updates and new features have long been subject to human review before launching, but Meta has reportedly doubled down on the use of AI in recent months. And Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible dominating the box office again. After helping to fuel a record-breaking Memorial Day weekend, Disney's live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch taking first place with $63 million, enough to pass Sinners as the second highest grossing movie of the year with $280 million in domestic ticket sales. The forecast for the summer box office remains promising, although there is a long way to go to reach the $4 billion reached pre-pandemic and during the Barbenheimer summer, Joe.
It looks like a Labubu. All right, thank you, Savannah. Coming up, pedal power.
When we come back, the band of bikers looking to make a sometimes intimidating sport a little more inclusive. Stay with us. I'll introduce you next. We are back and we're hitting the road with a group that's making cycling more welcoming for every body and every ability. It's called All Bodies on Bikes. It's formed by 2 women who say you don't have to be a certain shape or size to ride.
This group bike ride isn't a race.
Who here is their first All Bodies on Bikes ride?
That's so awesome, yay! It's about reclaiming the road.
We're gonna stick together, we're gonna regroup at the top of hills.
The ride is run by the nonprofit All Bodies on Bikes, formed because the co-founders, Marley Blonsky and Kaylee Kornhauser, felt
left behind by the biking community.
In 2018, I rode my bike across Alaska from Seward to Dead Horse. It's a 1,000-mile ride. Unfortunately, there were no rain jackets or really any technical clothing in my sizes, and so I had to do that ride without a real rain jacket, without a down coat.
Kaylee and Marley connected on social media, bonding over similar challenges.
I was kind of a squeaky wheel on Twitter. I would reach out to companies of hey, it's really cool that you're making this thing. It'd be really cooler if it came in my size.
Their voices amplified after they were the focus of a 2021 documentary.
The world's telling you one thing, so to accept yourself is to maybe tell yourself a totally different narrative than what you've been taught.
All Bodies on Bikes pushes for industry-wide change, from noting weight limits on bikes.
There is no standard right now in the U.S. for where to disclose weight limits.
To creating cycling clothes for all sizes.
70% of Americans are considered overweight, and I hate that term, but live in bigger bodies. And so if they're not making stuff that fits us and works for us, just leaving billions of dollars on the table.
But their biggest passion are these group rides, open to all bodies and abilities. Is this type of speed how you do a lot of rides, where it's it's comfortable and not oh my gosh, I'm dying?
Yeah.
If I'm out of breath on a ride, it means we're going too fast.
Yep.
Huh, I like that. Their promise, no one will be left behind. And a little joy may be found on the journey.
These people that are all here today, they may not have found a space in a group ride in the past. And so being able to find it today is a big deal.
You are running a movement, really, that is so welcoming to bodies of all shapes and sizes. But have you always been positive and welcoming to yourself, to your own body?
No. That's a really good question. When I was a kid and a teenager, I was constantly trying to make my body smaller, and it was a real struggle. The bike really helped me find acceptance. I could go on these long distances, I could climb these hills, but my body wasn't in the way anymore. It was a source of power.
The duo are now on the cover of magazines, with Marley lending her name to a clothing line. As for those inclusive group rides, they're being organized now by 14 chapters across the country.
You guys have been movie stars. You've been cover stars. What's that been like?
I didn't think I'd be famous for riding bikes slowly. For walking my bike up a mountain.
When we first started this, my mom said, "You're going to be on the Today Show one day." And I was like, "No, we're not, Mom." And here we are. I feel like we're just living as authentically as we can, and people are responding to that with their own authenticity and their own joy. And it's it just keeps going.
Well, Kaylee and Marley say even professional racers join them on their rides, and they thank them for bringing up this conversation about body size and image when it comes to cycling.
Finally this hour, an introduction to the new face of NBC Nightly News. Tom Yamas is officially taking over as anchor tonight, bringing his experience and passion for journalism to this prestigious role. Tom opened up with today's Savannah Guthrie about his family, preparing for this day, and the honor of anchoring Nightly News.
And good evening. I'm Tom Yamas. We are coming on the air tonight with breaking news.
It's happening. How do you feel in this moment?
Savannah, I feel excited. I'm so looking forward to this. I can't wait. They're now racing against time. Some were calling this Tallahassee's most dangerous storm event ever. There's damage all the way down this block.
You are making history.
Yeah.
You're the first weekday Latino evening news anchor. That is an obligation and a privilege and an honor.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I thank all the Hispanic journalists that came before me, because when I was watching news and growing up, we'd watch news in English and Spanish. I saw people like Jose Diaz-Balart, people that I could look up to. And I saw, well, if they can do it, I could do it. But, Savannah, I think even bigger than that, my parents came here as immigrants. They came here with nothing. Their son is now going to be the anchor of Nightly News, one of the biggest and most important newscasts in our country. What it tells me is that the American dream is still alive. I know that because I'm living it.
You are a family man, and now you're a father of 3 adorable children. What does it mean to you to have this family, your beautiful wife, Jen, behind you as you embark on this big moment?
It's great. They're my biggest cheerleaders. They're so excited.
I knew Jen Yamas before I knew you.
Right.
Your wife is an incredible television producer herself. Does she ever give you advice?
Oh, all the time. I always talk to her. It's been so good to always have her advice and her ear.
So walk me through the average day for you in this new job. You're not getting up at my hours, you lucky duck,
Yeah, I
but you're
know.
staying up later too.
I try to get up at 6:30 so I can give my wife a break, help out with breakfast, get the kids going, and then 7 o'clock Today Show.
Ding, ding,
Savannah
ding.
and Craig, we're like, yes. We're watching that. I'm making breakfast. I'm getting them off to school, and then I start the consuming of news, and then I'll take a beat and I'll meditate and I'll pray. I just think it's good to clear your mind. I do it for 10 minutes, and I pray after that because I think it's important to be grateful. We have so much going on, but I find in that quiet time you get your best ideas, and you also sort of get some perspective. And then after that, I hit the gym, I try to work out, or I'll go for a run, I'll play really bad tennis. And then I'm on my way to work. And then I'm in the chair getting ready for breaking news, getting ready for nightly news and top story after that.
Well, if you play terrible tennis, then I think I'm ready to play with you.
We have to, that'd be so much fun.
I'm so happy for you and
Thanks.
proud of you. I know how hard you work and have worked for this, and I can't think of anyone better to take the reins of this show that we all love. So, Tom, congrats.
Savannah, thank you so much.
Thanks to Savannah Guthrie for sharing Tom's story. We are excited to watch our friend and colleague take the reins at Nightly News. You can tune into his first official broadcast tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC, and he will continue to anchor Top Story right here on News Now at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Congrats, Tom. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.